This morning's session focuses on the resilience agenda, but not looking at it as a single element of what the RAND does. But how do we take this engagement with the community, what we're learning about what makes communities capable, and using that knowledge to be able to drive solutions, but also to be able to think about how it enhances our own capacity. I think more often than not, we have a focus on the communities and the people that we're serving. And we're forgetting that also one of the target audience of the RAND is this network. When we came together over 3 years ago, when we started this process of thinking about what is resilience, what isn't resilience, I think that it's clear that we, through this deliberation and your capacity, we're driving the resilience agenda. You've heard from William and from Tara about the success of the launch of the State of African Resilience Report in Washington, D.C. But it should not stop there. It's not about the launch. It's not necessarily about the dissemination. It's about what will happen with this knowledge, with the evidence. To date, we have developed tools. We have had working groups. We have gone to each of the RI labs. There have been exchanges. And we reflected back upon this process to date. And we broke it up into 5 elements in a way here, where we first started with this contextual analysis. Remember when we first came together, not only did we discuss what is or what isn't resilience, but you all had an opportunity to be able to talk about your own individual context, where it resulted in a prioritization in terms of the types of challenges that you're faced with. So there have been a lot of tools and guidance developed around this contextual analysis. We want you to have an opportunity to be able to reflect upon this process. So the first working group is going to go over this process and allow you to be able to discuss this, to be able to identify what's been relevant, what's been effective, and perhaps what can be considered to be, for the network, a best practice. We're also going to have you think about, well, if we have additional resources to improve the process and the methodology, where should we target these investments? And if we identify these areas for investment, how can they be strengthened? Who should we target within your network to be able to do this? We cannot be able to address every single entry point or every single dimension to be able to strengthen. So based upon your understanding today, what are you telling your teams in terms of this data? How is this deeper understanding of the qualitative assessment driving your innovations? And perhaps you each have developed a different strategy about how you're communicating this. So the second working group is going to allow you to be able to individually think about what you have uncovered, to be able to then discuss this in your working groups. And then perhaps each of the working groups will start to identify these dimensions that you find salient. So to be able to compare and contrast. In a way here, what we're hoping to do here is that this morning's session allows you to be able to, as a network, instruct us in terms of where and how we should invest resources in terms of improving the process. That's the first working group. The second working group allows you as a network to be able to support each other in terms of how you're communicating the qualitative analysis to your innovations team, and to develop strategies to be able to strengthen that communication. But also emerging out of this, if you remember, we had said that if we develop a common methodology, even though you each have very context-specific focus, and we've seen this in a way here where how you describe certain dimensions depending on your context, there are certain elements that are different. So wealth in the context of a rural context versus urban, you're going to have different elements in there. Perhaps, depending on whether you're responding to a flood or climate variability, the wealth dimension might be an underlying factor of vulnerability, or it may be an outcome. But through these discussions, if you had to think about your resources and the entry points, will there be emerging out of this certain patterns in terms of what we might see as critical dimensions that as a community we would want to promote investments to say that these dimensions are so critical to promoting and strengthening resilience that as a community, whether you are at a national government level, a policymaker, a donor, an implementing partner, that we have to be able to focus our attention on strengthening these dimensions. And through this process, it might guide you in terms of thinking about what is the role of the RAM. We may identify pathways and entry points, but given the resources that are available to support innovations, where do you make those investments? If you have $20,000 versus $20 million, it's going to change how you think about your entry points. So through this process, we want to be able to support the development now of a strategy in terms of we've developed these salient dimensions, with better understanding these pathways. How are we articulating this and supporting our innovations team, but also how are we prioritizing what we're targeting? And that's the sec resilience within these communities.